out the wilderness of Harbin's Pingfang district. A heavily loaded military train emerged through the miasma and fog in the distance. Over 100 square-shaped buildings came into sharper focus under the train's headlights. Moments later, the train halted at the military zone known as the Epidemic Prevention and Water Purification Department. However, this unit bore a far more sinister designation, Unit 731. From 1936 to 1945, within this 6.1 square kilometer complex of square buildings, this Japanese unit committed a series of notorious atrocities. Over 13,000 people was directly killed, and over 20,000 more perished due to biological warfare unleashed by this unit. This area was a true no man's land. The number of survivors is zero. Where did this unit come from? What crimes did they perpetrate during the war? And what price did they pay after its end? Today's topic is heavy, but confronting historical truths is never easy. Let us prepare ourselves and explore the grim reality of Unit 731's crimes. From the Meiji Restoration in 1868 to Japan's victory in the Russo-Japanese War, Japan transformed into a capitalist state within 40 years. Alongside this rapid development, Japan's militaristic ambitions grew unchecked. It began converting the vast lands and mineral resources of Korea and northeast China. In 1931, Japan launched the Mukden Incident, and the Kwantung Army's aggression pierced the China-Korea border. The Japanese established the puppet state of Manchukuo in northeast China, occupying territory 3 times the size of Japan itself. To solidify colonial rule and fuel its expansionist ambitions, the Japanese military began developing biological weapons, aiming to devastate China through germ warfare and break the will of Chinese people. The prime culprit behind this was Shirō Ishii. Born in 1892 in Shiba, Japan, Ishii came from a prominent family. Ishii's parents had 6 children. The 2 daughters died young. 3 old brothers all pursued military careers. The eldest, Takeo, died during the Russo-Japanese War in attack to Hill 203 in the Battle of Port Arthur. His second and third brothers, Tsuyoshi and Mizuo, served in the Japanese army invading China. Unlike his brothers, Shirō Ishii chose a more insidious path. As medical doctor from Kyoto Imperial University, Ishii was obsessed with developing biological weapons. Having studied in Germany, he was particularly intrigued by chemical weapons used during World War I. Ishii believed Japan urgently needed a biological warfare unit. He told the military leaders biological weapons were cheaper, ideal for a resource-scarce nation like Japan, and unlike conventional weapons, which allowed injured soldiers to return to battle. Biological agents could spread through victims, infecting rural and urban populations without damaging infrastructures. Ishii also saw the opportunity for his personal advancement. As Japan's military medical system was dominated by Tokyo University graduates, for someone from Kyoto University like himself, creating a new military unit was a path to prominence. Under Ishii's influence, the Kwantung Army established the Dongxiang Experimental Base near Harbin in 1932. Due to rudimentary equipment and prisoner escapes, this base was abandoned. However, Ishii persisted, convincing the Japanese military to invest heavily in what became the Kwantung Army Epidemic Prevention and Water Purification Department, Unit 731. This fortress of hell, encompassing over 150 buildings, included laboratories, prisons, incinerators, bacterial cultivation rooms, even a small airfield. Unlike typical military units, over 3,000 members of Unit 731 included only 1/3 soldiers. The remaining 2,000 were Japan's medical elite. These individuals, who should have upheld the Hippocratic oath to save lives, became complicit in militarism under the gaze of science. They treated humans as experimental material, stripping victims of their names and referring to them as lotta, Japanese for woodlogs. They included pregnant Chinese women, children, resistance fighters, Korean laborers, and prisoners of war from nations like Britain and the Soviet Union. High-voltage fences separated the living from the dead, with sentries guarding 24/7. The stench of disinfectant in the laboratories could not cover the smell of blood and decay. But Shirō Ishii took pride in this, telling his subordinates, "For the empire's victory, we must transcend moral constraints." Unit 731 experiments fell into three main categories: bacterial infection, human vivisection, and extreme condition testing. Victims who were selected for bacterial experiments will face the pathogens picked by Ishii. The Japanese forcibly injected civilians or coerced them into consuming contaminated food under threat of death. They meticulously recorded every second from exposure to disease onset, documenting victims' struggle and the spread of pathogens through physiological data like temperature and heart rate. This experiment enabled Unit 731 to identify highly contagious and lethal bacteria. They produced biological weapons by using 4,500 flea incubators. Each one is capable of yielding 45 kilograms of infected fleas per cycle, 300 kilograms of plague bacteria, 500 to 700 kilograms of anthrax, 800 to 900 kilograms of typhoid, and about 1,000 kilograms of cholera monthly. They even laced melons with typhoid, monitoring bacterial density and distributing contaminated fruit to spread disease among civilians. Unit 731 doctors also visited other POW camps, posing as epidemic prevention teams to inject captives with bacterial agents. At a British POW camp in Mukden, Japanese disguised plague injections as smallpox vaccines, killing 186 British prisoners. For infected victims, a bullet might have been a merciful end, but Japanese saw this as wasteful. Those victims will face Unit 731's most infamous experiments. Without anesthesia, Japanese doctors cut open victims' chest or abdomens to observe organ damage, sometimes removing hearts or livers while victims were still conscious. A former Japanese military doctor confessed post-war. Their eyes filled with despair, but we were ordered to ignore it and treat them as lotta. To study hemorrhage, Unit 731 performed amputations, sewing served limbs onto other parts of the body. Some victims had their stomachs removed, with esophagus directly connected to intestines. According to Ken Yuasa, a Japanese military doctor, vivisections were common beyond Unit 731, with at least 1,000 Japanese doctors in China performing such acts. Yuasa noted that most vivisections on prisoners were conducted for practice or just amusement, and they were routine among Japanese doctors in China. A former Unit 731 medical assistant interviewed anonymously by the New York Times described his first vivisection of a plague-infected victim to study plague bombs.
男は自分がもう終わりだと分かっていたので、部屋に連れてこられて縛られた時も抵抗しなかった。しかし私はメスを手に取ると彼は叫び始めました。私は胸から腹部まで切り込みました。彼は痛みで顔がひっつむまで叫びました。想像を絶する声がした。これは私によって初めての生体解剖でした。
Ironically, even Unit 731 members were not spared. Yoshio Tamura, a member of Unit 731's special team, recalled the case of Yoshio Suto. Suto was infected by the plague bombs he made.
数日前まで女に話に夢中だったストも今ではすっかり痩せ細っている。彼の体は跡だらけで胸には大きなひっかり傷があり、そこから血が流れ出ていた。彼は苦痛で叫び呼吸困難に陥った。私は彼の全身を消毒液で消毒した。彼は動くたびに首の周りのロープがきつく締まっていた。私はストーソンの体を注意深く検査した後、メスを外科医に渡し、外科医はメスを逆さに持ち、ストーソンの胴体の皮膚から下に向かって切り込みました。ストーは畜生と叫んだと亡くなりました。
To perfect biological weapons and treatments for Japanese troops, Unit 731 conducted extreme experiments. Victims were tied to crosses at the Anda test site, subjected to air or ground explosions of infected bombs, and treated variably to assess infection rates. Other experiments explored human limits, depriving victims of food and water to record average death time, placing them in the low-pressure chambers until their eyes bulged, hanging them upside down until death, crushing them with heavy objects, electrocuting them, dehydrating them, spinning them in the centrifuge, exposing to lethal X-rays, injecting with animal blood or seawater, burning them, or bury them alive. Japanese military doctor Hisato Yoshimura conducted frostbite experiments, submerging victims' limbs in water of varying temperatures to freeze them solid. He struck frozen limbs with a stick, noting the wooden sound, and recorded temperature changes to develop a frostbite resistance index. Unit 731 also categorized the pre-experiment conditions of their victims, which included factors such as sleep deprivation, 24 hours of starvation, consuming a full meal, consuming a hot meal, after physical exercise, after a hot bath, etc. They also recorded the victim's dietary intake over the 5 days prior to the experiments, noting details such as high-protein diets, animal-based or plant-based, and salt intake levels of 45 grams per day, or no salt at all. Others from Unit 731 referred Hisato Yoshimura as a scientific devil or cold-blooded creature due to his zeal, not only for vivisection. For the frostbite experiment mentioned before, Yoshimura's typical practice at the end was to shatter the frozen limbs as ice blocks. He also left 2 naked men outside in temperatures of minus 50 degrees Celsius, filming the entire process as the 2 victims froze to death. The unbearable suffering of these 2 individuals was evident, their fingernails digging into each other's flesh in their agony. In 1950, Yoshimura published an article in the Journal of Physiological Society of Japan, admitting to conducting experiments on 20 children and a 3-day-old infant, exposing them to ice and salt water at 0 degrees Celsius. After this article drew criticism, he was interviewed by the Mainichi Shimbun, yet he expressed no remorse and continued to deny any wrongdoing. In August 1945, as Japan's surrender loomed, Shirō Ishii ordered the destruction of all evidence. On August 11th to 12th, 300 prisoners and 600 laborers, aware of their fate, is execution. 1/4 of them committed suicide to preserve their dignity. The rest were killed by gas, injection, or shooting. Their bodies were incinerated, and their remaining bones was exploded with dynamite. Ishii asked the whole unit to take the secrets to their graves and distributing cyanide vials to them for suicide if they were captured. The facility was demolished. However, its sturdy core building survived. Ishii fled to his hometown Shiba, staging a fake funeral to evade capture. Nevertheless, he was tracked and arrested by the US intelligence agents and brought back to Tokyo. Between January and February 1946, American specialists in biological warfare interrogated Ishii, demanding him confess to his crimes. Ishii refused, arguing that Unit 731 was created to protect Japan, and the biological warfare research was for self-defense. In 1947, to escape punishment, Ishii's assistant, Lieutenant Colonel Ryo Ichinato, negotiated with the U.S. military. He offered all of the human experimentation and biological warfare research data in exchange for immunity from war crimes charged for the unit's leadership. The U.S. government accepted this deal and informed the Soviet forces that Ishii and others were unaccounted for, ensuring that Unit 731 members would not be prosecuted as war criminals. As a result, Shirō Ishii and his colleagues evaded the trial. In 1958, 1 year before Ishii's death, he attended a reunion of Unit 731's members and delivered a farewell speech. Due to the immunity agreement formalized in 1948, Ishii was never prosecuted for any war crimes or crimes against humanity until his death. The screams and shouts, piercing those long nights like tore silk, but could not break through a rusted iron window. The blood and tears stained the black soil of northeast China into red, but could not penetrate a thin sheet of justice. Why people have to remember wars and crimes? Why honor the victims? Not for shedding tears or chattering slogans, but to expose this festering wound, to guide against its silent decay into mold and its growth into a greater poison in the shadows. I often wonder what those ordinary people thought in their last breath. Were they longing to say the unspoken daily words, "When will the stew be ready, Mom?" Or thinking of their children, gently touching their faces? They were heroes, yet they never wished to be. There were countless living people just like you and me, thrust unwillingly into the flesh grinder of war. This part of history is a living pen, but we must learn to choke it down, even with our eyes wide opened and fists clenched, then grounding the truth beneath our feet, so our coming generations will not shroud in this darkness again. This is Lotus Sleuth, a new channel unravels the mysterious fog of Eastern culture. See you in the next one, and have a good one.